Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the 2018 BMSC Scrabble Championship coverage. I know there are no viewers on Twitch right now, but who cares because someone is watching this YouTube video somewhere. Probably in Hong Kong. Hello Hong Kong viewers. We're starting with round 19 because we are starting in the middle of the tournament. This is day 3 of the main event and we will be starting with Phil Robertshaw and Lewis Mackay. Before we start, let me introduce my commentator for the day, or at least for this round only. Chris Hawkins. Hi, Chris.
Morning, Jess.
So, have you been following the tournament at all?
Yeah. Not been doing much this bank holiday weekend, especially with the weather we've had. So I've been online watching the Centre Star coverage.
Do you want to update everyone how things are going while the players are drawing tiles? And through that, there's a shiny cloister in there too. Showing off my shiny Pineco to Phil Robertshaw and kicked it out. So, oh well.
I can hear tiles rattling. Are they starting yet?
Hang on. Sorry, how is your internet? The internet's pretty poor, to be fair. It's an Ethernet cable would be appreciated if you have one spare, but you know, what kind of cable are you looking for? Ethernet cable. It's one that connects to these ports down here. They usually it provides a more stable internet connection. Okay, that means it's going. Okay. That's okay. These are usually Ethernet cables, but I'm not going to unplug anything to get to it. Okay. We'll try and start when ready as well. So, I mean, we don't need the Ethernet cable now. I can change that later. So. She'll probably come back in anyway in the middle of the round, but I mean I'll deal with Ethernet between rounds. So we're gonna start momentarily as soon as the players are ready, and I'll do my best to actually make sure I'm properly prepared because Cockle's not prepared either, so that's a bit.
Okay, if Jess is okay with what I'm saying, I'm going to take over commentary now. She's just setting up the racks for both players. What you're watching is not an actual video stream of the game going on right now. You're watching a computer software simulation of the game, manually being input by Jess. On the left-hand side, you can see Phil's rack, and at the moment, Jess is just sorting out Lewis's rack. The two players, Phil and Lewis, are two of the top players in the UK. They've had good runs through this tournament. Just to let you know, Phil started with an excellent run of 10 wins out of the first 11. He lost a couple of games after that in the next 3, but then he finished strongly last night to be 15-3 plus 1,452 spread points and leading the tournament overnight, the A division. Lewis started strongly as well. He was 8-0, 8 wins and no losses on the first day. Wheels came off a little bit in the next 6 games. He lost 4 out of 6, but got back on track to be 13-4 going into the last round before the break overnight. But he lost his last game, so he's 13-5. So there's actually a 2-game gap between Phil and Lewis going into this game with 7 rounds to go. Phil going first had an excellent draw, 3 vowels, 4 consonants, beautiful balance and good tiles as well. So he started with the bonus leotard. There were other choices, but he's gone with leotard. Some players like to open vertically. You saw that he put leotard going down the board rather than across the board. If you've ever played Scrabble, you might be one of those players who always starts vertically because you could start, you always start horizontally because you didn't realise you could start vertically, but it's perfectly acceptable to do that. It does put some opponents off if you do that. I know it affects me when I play players who... Lewis has got a rack of, if these are the correct tiles, D, R, and then 3 E's, and then an O and a V. So he'll be looking to not score a bonus probably like Phil did, but he'll be trying to score as many points as he can with that rack. Both players are very adept at balancing their racks. If they haven't got a bonus, they'll know exactly how many tiles to play to maximise the chances of getting a bonus on the next turn. Rack balance is very important at this level in tournaments. If you can... I'm seeing a rack. Let me just confirm what rack Lewis is going to be making a move with. I'm seeing a rack of A, D, I, J, S, U now. And the move that, in fact, I'm slightly behind. What Lewis did was exchange. He had 7 consonants on his first rack. Yeah, I missed that. So Lewis had a terrible first rack, couldn't play through any of the vowels without leaving lots of consonants on his rack for his second go. So he changed 5 of his consonants. And his second rack is going to be D, R, E, 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 O, V. In the meantime, after Phil's start of Leotard, he picked up the J and an S. He's used the J parallel to Leotard and scored points in both directions with the J. So he's out to a superstar, 87-0. But it's Lewis's turn with the D, R, triple E, O, V rack. These two players did meet earlier in the tournament. This is a repeat matchup between Phil and Lewis. They met in round 7, and the result of that game was... let me just see if I can find it. Yeah, Lewis won that first game by quite a lot, actually, 472 to 359. So in this matchup, Phil is looking like the stronger favourite to get his own back on Lewis at this stage, anyway, very early in the game. When you've got O, V, E, R on your rack, often you would put that at the front. If you were juggling your tiles, you'd put that at the front of the rack and then see what the other 3 make, and if there's any floaters on the board for an 8-letter word beginning with over. Prefixes are a good way to make 7 and 8-letter words in Scrabble. At the top level of Scrabble, you will find that they do take quite a bit of time on their first few moves so that they don't make any mistakes that could cost them further down the line. So Lewis will be taking his time on this rack. No bonus on it, but he's just hoping to have a bonus either on the next move or as soon as he can after that. Potential plays he's got. There's a nice 7-letter word through the ID on the board, which is videoed. That only scores 24, but it's a good way of getting rid of the V, which in some ways is a bad tile, although it did go with his OV and OE and R for an over prefix. It looks like he's plumped for that, so videoed is the play, turning over 5 tiles as well, keeping ER, which if you're going to try and get a bonus, you want to keep as many of the tiles E, R, T, A, N, I, and S, which rearranged spells retains. So some people call that the retains rack. If you can keep as many of those on your rack for the next go, it does help. He's drawn A, D, E, F, and W to go with the E and the R, so that's what he'll be looking at next time. Moving on to what Phil's looking at, he's drawn 2 U's. He had 1 U from before and he's drawn a second one. And what he's choosing to do straight away is dump both U's in one move. You might worry about doing that if the Q hasn't come out yet, but top players tend not to think like that. If the Q's still in the bag, they'll not keep a U on their rack just in case they pick the Q. In dumping his 2 U's, he picked a V, and that's the other V out now, and it's got duplicated T's. Top level Scrabblers don't really like having 2 letters the same if they can avoid it. So if he hasn't got a bonus with those 2 T's and the V, he'll be looking to play at least 1 T and the V off on his next move. Looking at Lewis's rack, he's got a balanced rack. A and 2 E's are his vowels. The consonants are a bit clunky. The W and the F don't really like to be played together. I think Wayford is on there, if you can be Wayford. Yeah, the 7-letter word that he's got on his rack is Wayford. Looking around the board for a place to play it might actually be quite tricky. Doesn't hook on the U's, doesn't hook on the V. Obviously V, there's no 2-letter words with V. If you play any sort of Scrabble at any level, you'll know all about 2-letter words being so important in Scrabble, and hooking onto 1 letter on the board to form a 2-letter word is how a lot of players like to play the game. But V is actually a blocker, so there'll be no words, no 2-letter words going under the V in videoed. The U's at the top are obviously good letters to hook on, either going to the left or to the right on either of the 2 U's. So later in the game we might see a bonus played on the number 5 row on the board. Again, Lewis taking his time with this move. Given that he hasn't got a bonus, he's got to work out what the best play is. He's already 66 behind, so he doesn't want to stay behind for too much longer. The sooner he bonuses, the better. Jess is using the computer to select some possible moves that he might play. High scoring moves are freed for 42. That would be played underneath videoed in what's called a parallel play. You can just see it going on the board there in yellow. Another scoring move would be fewer for 35, but that would be a dangerous move because it opens up the right hand vertical column. What he's actually going for is in the same place as fewer, he's playing a shorter word, few. That scores 31, so it's halved the gap roughly. His deficit is now only 35. He's 90 points to 55 down. The 4 tiles he kept, again, he's balancing his rack, he's keeping good tiles, A, D, E, R. So with a good pickup, he would hope to have a bonus on the next go. He's picked some good tiles. We'll look at his rack next time. Moving back to Phil's choices, as I say, he picked a T and a V when he dumped the 2 U's. That makes an 8-letter word if the right floater's on the board, which is an E, which is videttes. And although those 2 U's are sort of blocking videttes, the 2-letter words that are made as well as the word videttes are fine. So he's going to bonus straight away and pull even further ahead. So he's leading 161 to 55 now. Nice fishing play with the Ulu to give him an instant bonus straight away. It's not always the way it goes, but for Phil, this tournament seems to be, as he was admitting himself on Facebook yesterday, he's having quite a bit of luck as well as all the skill that you need to compete at the highest level. Knowing words like videttes, for example, not everyone would spot that. He's really playing well. You can see Lewis's rack, again, balanced. He kept A, D, E, R, which was a balanced keep, and he picked balanced tiles as well as the good letter S for hooking. He's got roasted on his rack, if he can find somewhere to play it. Torsade. They'll be looking at 8-letter words as well. Few, you think of few as not being a word that takes an S on the end, but in Scrabble, the top players will know what words can have an S on the end, and fuse, F-E-W-S, is allowable in Scrabble, so he could bonus down there if he can't find anywhere else to play roasted. One of the 8-letter words that Roasted makes with the right floating tile on the board is asteroid. There's an I on the board, so he could play asteroid. Slightly fewer points than if he went on the right-hand side. He's over 100 behind now, so he definitely will be bonusing on this turn. It's just which one he chooses to play. Okay, Jess has put the move that Lewis is committed to. It's Torsade, however you like to pronounce it. Scores 80 points, closes the gap to just over 25, 26 in fact. The danger with that move, obviously, is that it's opened up a lot of hotspots. You've got the triple on the right-hand side. You've got the Torsade's hook on the bottom row. But because there's two hotspots, Lewis would be looking at taking one himself after Phil takes off the first. He'll get first choice, Phil, of the 2 hotspots, but Lewis will definitely have one of the other ones. Okay, so Phil's rack is balanced. A, E, I are his vowels, good vowels, and his consonants F, H, S, T. He might be looking to bonus again. There's no 7s with that rack. With the right floaters, he might find the bonuses Faithers with an R or Shitface with a C, but those floaters aren't on this board, so he's going to be not bonusing this time. He'll be looking to score with one of those 2 hotspots, keep some good tiles for maybe a bonus on the next go. The word he's played scores a huge 59. Some bonuses score 59. His 4-letter play of HAFT, Haft, in the bottom right-hand corner takes him nearly 100 ahead again. He's 85 ahead with Lewis to play. There is one hotspot still available for Lewis to score on. After Torsade, Lewis drew the first blank. The question mark symbol means blank if you're new to Scrabble. He's fairly balanced. He's got 2 vowels and 4 consonants to go with the blank. The tricky tile obviously is going to be the Q here. He won't be able to bonus with a C, Q, W, even with the blank on his rack, so he'll be looking to score, possibly dump the Q if he can. Picking that blank is good. Obviously, when you've got the blank, your opponent hasn't. There's one more blank to come. Lewis will be desperate to pick that one as well as soon as he can after playing this first one. I think if Phil gets the second blank, it's going to be very hard for Lewis to win at this stage. Okay, so as we expected, Lewis is committed to his move. He's taking the right-hand triple out, so both of those hotspots that Torsade opened up are gone now. Lewis kept the Q. He didn't dump it off. You know, he could have just done QI for 11, but that wouldn't really have been enough points to get rid of the Q. So he's keeping the Q for another turn, but he's also keeping the blank. He's played off the C and the W crew for 38, not as many as Phil's hotspot score of 59, but it's a good score, 38. Puts him 47 behind with Phil to go, so that gap will increase when Phil moves. Phil's doing really well with his pickups, having kept IES, 3 good tiles. He picked LOPR, so you might be able to see he's got a bonus on his rack spoiler if he can find somewhere to play it. One place it does fit is, in fact, the tiles have changed. Yeah, Jess said this might happen. In fact, Phil's rack is, he kept IES, he picked OEMR, so he's got 4 vowels and 3 consonants, which was still balanced. Most players would like to have 3 vowels and 4 consonants to have perfect balance, but obviously you can find bonuses with different numbers of vowels and consonants. The bonus is on this move that Phil will be hoping to spot and play. There's only one 7-letter word, which is nearly spelled out on the rack there, isomere, ISOMERE. Sorry not to give you any definitions of these words. Feel free to go hunting afterwards for what these words mean. Isomere doesn't appear to fit on this board, so He'll be looking for an 8-letter word if he can't get his 7-letter word down. The D of vedettes gives an 8-letter word emeroids, not hemorrhoids, but emeroids, E-M-E-R-O-I-D-S. That would be a good spot if he can find that. He might be thinking, is it worth playing because it opens up a 9 timer? It would score well. Let me just work out the score. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 76 for emeroids, if that's what Phil chooses to do. But the top line would then have what's called a 9 timer hotspot between the two triples, A1 and H1. And if Lewis had the right rack to go through the E of emeroids that Phil would put up there, that could be all of Phil's lead wiped out in one go. He's now over 100 ahead again, 123. He has committed to emeroids. So now it's all about whether Lewis can use that E to get all of that lead, that deficit wiped out, or as much of it as he can do. If you recall, Lewis kept EQ blank. He's had a terrible pickup to go with that. GGOP. So he won't be bonusing through that E. He won't be getting a 9 timer. He'll be looking again to balance his rack, play the Q off if he can, but with what he picked up, I doubt it. He'll be looking to just get rid of the Gs. He might risk leaving that E open. He needs a massive score himself, so if he sort of leaves it there and Phil can't use it, it's there for another turn for him, but more likely Phil would block it. There's a possibility of just dumping the Q for QI in 2 directions on the C6 square for 22, but keeping GGOP E together with the blank is not appealing. He's going to go on that E at the top. Well, he would have to use his blank to do it, I think. He could just block it with something like peg for 6, but doesn't appeal at all. These are the sorts of moves that really sort out the top players from the standard players. They would know, they would have a sort of calculator in their head to work out whether a particular play is a strong play or a weak play. Okay, so as we thought, Lewis, partly because he was forced to, has left that E at the top open, so the 9 timer is still available for Phil if Phil has a good rack. The word that Lewis played, a 5-letter word, pog, or poggy, P-O-G-G-E, again, no definition, sorry. It's dumped off those awkward tiles that he did pick up on the previous go. He's kept the Q and the blank again, so he's hoping to get some good tiles to go with the Q and the blank on this coming go. He's exactly 100 behind, and he's just got to cross all his fingers and hope that Phil doesn't take that E at the top for too many points. After emeroids, Phil picked not a very good rack, 5 consonants with duplications all over, double L, double N, and 2 A's as well. The best tile is obviously the Z, so we'll be looking to maximise points using the Z. The word that the computer is suggesting is Zenalla, Z-E-N-A-L-L-A. That would take out the dangerous E at the top, so Lewis can't use it. Scores a huge score as well, 48. Well, what's happened in the room, obviously Jess is catching me up here as we go through the computer simulation of what's going on in the room. Zenalla is not a word. So Phil played Zenalla, thinking it was good. Lewis instantly challenged that. In the room, they would have a device for challenging words and checking if they're good or not. And Lewis challenged Zenalla off. So on that move, that was perfect for Lewis. Phil scored no points. Lewis has got the E spot for his turn to, maybe get a 9-timer, but as the pickup showed, he didn't pick tiles that are going to lead to a 9-timer. So although it was good in some ways that Phil didn't score, he's still not able to close the gap by getting a bonus. What he's choosing to do, it looks like, is dump the Q. He had 2 N's when he played POGGE. He picked 2 N's, got rid of 2 G's and picked 2 N's. He's played one of them off and got rid of the Q finally. So he's balancing his rack as best he can. He's keeping that blank to bonus with eventually. QIN Quinn or Kin scores 25, so he's closed the gap to 75. Now the thing about the move that lost Phil a go, Zanella, what he was doing there was mixing it up with the word Zanella. So maybe Phil would realise he's made a mistake and play Zanella, but he hasn't. He's played Lays, so he's got rid of the Z on this turn. He's taken out the E hotspot on the top line and scored 39, so his lead's back over 100 again. Lewis is looking at the rack. What did he keep on his previous go? He kept the blank, obviously, BANO, so balanced, but the B's not a great tile. And he's been unfortunate and picked 2 clunky, as we call them, consonants, H and M. HMBANO blank. We may have a 7 on our rack that doesn't go on the board. Hambone is nice. Hambone is a word. And Bonhams, like Helena Bonham Carter, her middle name. Bonhams is a word. If those go down, Lewis would have the ability to spot both of those. If they don't go down, he'd be looking for 8-letter words. Bohemian, if there's an I floating. Hamboned and hambones are both good. Hornbeam. Hornbeam almost fits through the R of emeroids, but not quite. So it looks like Lewis is going to be unlucky with this rack again in terms of bonusing, which, as I've said, he needs to bonus as soon as he can to just get the game competitive again. At the moment, it's an automatic win for Phil. He doesn't bonus, and especially if Lewis doesn't pick the second blank, which is in the bag. 30 tiles or so left in, so we're well into the game now. Wow, well, the computer's showing that Bohemian, the move that I suggested would play if there was the right floater, is available. There's 2 places to play as well. I missed that. So it's whether Lewis spots it, and he does. So he's gone for the high scoring place. The E in emeroids was one place to play Bohemian, but he's playing it through the E Pog, P-O-G-G-E. It overlaps some words, so he's getting even more points for his Bohemian, 90 in fact. So he's 311 to 335 down now. And with a good pickup, he's got every chance of clawing this game back and winning it from over 100 behind. As you can see, Phil's rack is slightly unbalanced. He's only got 2 vowels. Remember, he played lays on his last go. So his pickup was the C-E-G. He took a bit of a chance on his previous go because keeping A-L-N-N, he's opening yourself up to an unbalanced rack on your next turn if you'd only pick 1 vowel or even no vowels, and that's what's happened. He's got glance at a glance. You can see he's got glance. If there's somewhere to play it. Cleaning, if there was a floating I. Some other letter words, enhancing and enhancing. There's no floating I's. So Phil won't be bonusing this time. Lewis doesn't know that, but that's going to be the case. Lewis will be behind still on his turn. He's 24 behind at the moment, and he'll be at least 40, 50 behind when it's his turn to play. Looking at the shape of the board, if you want to call it that, the V's on the left-hand side and at the bottom in videoed and videttes, they're quite blocky. Obviously, we talked about how you can't play underneath the V of videoed for a hooking place because there's no two-letter words. Later in the game, there might come a time where there's an 8-letter word played down from the V in videttes. Obviously, it depends on pickups, but that is still a lane that will take a bonus for one of the two players. Obviously, Lewis would dearly love to get a bonus down there to retake the lead. Other places bonuses might play. The E in Emeroids is still wide open. The B and O in Bohemian. Bottom row, Torsade, I presume takes an S. So Torsades as a hook and a word ending in ST could be a nice 8-letter word later in the game. Just looking on the board, there's only 3 I's come out so far, so that means there's 6 in the bag. Most Scrabblers will hate having I's on their rack. Too many I's is a bad thing, as you know. So I wonder if we'll see either player having eye trouble later. Okay, Phil took his time on that go, important stage of the game. He's decided to block some floaters and scores a few points. GAN doesn't score many, 18 points. So he stretched his lead out to not 100 like it was before, but over 40. 42 is his lead, 353 to 311. GAN is the word he's played, overlapping B and O to make bar and on. He's opened up a triple. But you won't be bonusing up there. You might get some sort of good score up there, but you won't get a 7-letter word anywhere in that corner. That move was basically to balance his rack. He's kept 1 vowel and 3 consonants. He's got rid of one of the 2 N's. Some Scrabblers might think, well, why get rid of the N and the G? Because ING are, there's lots of word endings ending in ING, but Phil will know that can be a bit of a fool's game to keep NG, hoping to play ING bonuses. If they come along, they're great, but you shouldn't really balance your rack to get them. And Phil's dumped off the G as well as one of the N's. Okay, so Lewis had a not particularly good rack, 2 Y's, a K and a U, so awkward tiles, but what he's managed to do is score a huge score using the Z that's on the board, ZUPA, Zupa. Again, parallel plays score more points than just one word through another like a crossword. He's pushed his score up for that move to 44 with all the overlaps. PE for 8 and AR 2 and UM 4, as well as the 30 for Zupa, adds up to 44. Computer's doing that for me, and he's actually in the lead now. On equal terms, he's taken the lead, having been behind for so long. He's really making a fight of this game. The problem with Zupa is that you'll remember he had 2 Y's on his rack, which he's still going to have. Y is a good tile for scoring with, but not good for getting a bonus. But as he doesn't really need the bonus now, he won't be worried about that. Okay, so Phil did pick 2 I's. We said there were 6 in the bag, and 2 have come at once to Phil. There's no 7-letter word. There's client for a 6-letter word. A few 8-letter words if the right floater was on the board. Gentilic, limnetic. These floaters don't appear to be on this board, so Phil will be doing his calculations, or whatever you want to call them, going through all the learning that he's done over the years. He'll sort of have studied racks like this, and he'll know that he hasn't got a 7. He'll know what the 8s are, probably the ones that I've mentioned, and there are a few other ones. Lecithin, that's the chemical. That's through an H if there was an H on the board. So really interesting game position now. Level scores more or less, 2-point deficit to Phil. 1 blank to come, which I think is going to be crucial in this game. It could be that the one who picks it will win, but we'll see. Okay, so Phil is doing a real fishing move here. He's playing off as few tiles as possible, scoring a few points, retaking the lead, and keeping INLET, which are 5 really good tiles for bonusing. So he'll be hoping to bonus next turn, even though he doesn't need it. He'll be hoping to do that next turn. Cine is the word he's played, like a cine camera. ARC was the hook, as well as OI. Scored 21, putting him into a 19-point lead, 374 to 355. Because of the bonuses we've had through this game, both players are going to score well into the 400s, which is always nice to see. Again, people who are fairly new to Scrabble who might be tuning in, this is an example of a very open game. There's other sorts of Scrabble games which are called staircase games, which become very blocky, and there's not really many places to score points, but both players here are very attacking. They don't worry about, like, for example, Lewis's Torsade. He knew that he was creating openings, but that's the way that the top players play, or most of them do. Okay, so there are the 2 Ys that Lewis had before. He still got them. What he did pick up was an X as well, so he's got words like boxy and box. KY is a 2-letter word that would get rid of one of the Ys. As well as looking at your rack, obviously you should be studying the board to see where these words might go. Now then, if that's what Lewis has played, that's fantastic. Yeah, he's scored as good as a bonus score in that top corner. I said that you can't score a bonus up there, but if Oryx is the play that Lewis is making, that's a bonus score. Now then, it didn't get played. I can see another word on the board, which is KY, and that seems to be what Jeff is telling me Lewis is committed to. So that looks like an error. If Oryx was available there, Oryx is a word that, similar to Onyx, did play in that top corner. And Lewis missed it. That could end up being the turning point of the game. Let me just check. ORY. Yeah, it did play. That was 86 points missed by Lewis there. I'm sure if he'd seen it, he would have played it. So KY to score, can't quite see the score for that, 16, 26, 29 it looks like. Puts him back in the lead, but only by 10 when he could have been 60 up. So yeah, maybe we'll get a response from Lewis later as to why he chose that move. Presumably he just missed Oryx. Okay, so looking at Phil's turn, he's 10 behind, but this could be, as I say, the turning point in the match, because he's picked the second blank, which I predicted would be quite a vital thing to do. He also picked an A, so he's got 3 vowels, 3 consonants, as well as a blank, about as perfect balance as you could want. One word that jumps out to me is valeting on the V of vedettes, coming down onto the double word. There's other V bonuses as well, venality, ventails, with just an E on the end instead of the S. Bonus on the bottom row, is there an ST ending bonus? No, so he won't be bonusing hooking torsades, but if he is going to bonus on this turn, it's going to be most likely through the V of vedettes down onto the double word at B14. He's 10 behind, and that scores 74, so he'd go 64 ahead. We're getting into the pre-end game now, so Phil would be thinking about how many tiles he would be leaving when he makes his move. Okay, he's gone for one of the V bonuses, ventails, VENTAILS, scoring 74. So he's 448 to 384 ahead, which is a 64-point lead. And we're looking at Lewis's rack now, and you can see the pickup wasn't great. After KY, he picked 2 more consonants. And maybe Lewis is thinking he's resigned to losing now. You do get to a point where you think it's a case of, I've lost, but I want to try and minimise the spread I'm going to lose by. So he's 60 behind. If he can reduce that to only losing by 30 or whatever, that's something he would do. Well, in fact, what a piece of luck for Lewis. He picked an N in his 2 letters that he picked. And having missed Oryx, he's played Onyx for 86. What a piece of luck for Lewis there. Not planned, I'm sure, but we're now looking at a 22-point lead for Lewis. What an amazing game this is. Oryx missed, Onyx scored 86, and we're looking at a 470 to 448 game. And the rack for Phil, having played Ventails and gone so far into the lead, it's really changed around now. He's got 5 vowels, including 3 I's. There were a lot of I's to come, and they've all come to one player, because Phil did have 2, and now he's got 3. IIIOURS, to try and claw back a 22-point deficit. So having said I was more or less resigned to a Phil win, it's looking more and more likely it's going to be a Lewis win, which in terms of the tournament and everybody else trying to claw their way up to first place is great, because Phil did have a 2-win cushion overnight. He was 15-3, 15 wins and 3 losses from the first 18 games. Lewis was 13-5. So this will be halving the gap for Lewis, and all the other players who were 2 or more wins behind Phil will be closing that gap as well if they win. This game isn't over, of course. Phil will be doing his hardest to win it, but we'll see what happens. If Jess could just let me know what Lewis's rack is, because I can't actually see that for myself. Okay, yeah, so we're looking at Lewis's rack. Once Phil has played, he's got BEILNR, and Phil's got, as I say, 5 vowels and the R and the S. So this is going to be quite interesting, actually. Without doing any accurate calculations, the person going first in the end game, if they can't go out, will try to be going out in 2. And looking at Lewis's rack, he can't go out in 1, I don't think, with he's got Berlin on his rack, BERILN, the capital city, which is a word in Scrabble, not defined as the capital city, obviously. It'll have another definition. So if Berlin does play on the board, Phil will be looking to block that. He'll be looking to go out in 2 and allow Lewis to score some points with his move in between Phil's 2 moves, and then catch Lewis with some points on his rack and win by a narrow margin. With the 3 I's, I think that will be a stretch, though. The word that's jumping out at me is iris, that's on Phil's rack. He's got iris, which might play somewhere for some points. Can't see where at the moment. But yeah, in any other situation with a more balanced rack, that's what the player behind would be hoping to do with a small deficit. Go out in 2, allow their opponent to make 1 move in between those 2 moves, and catch them with some points on their rack and squeak the win. But I think in this case, Phil will be looking. I've not been keeping track of time to see to know how much time Phil's got, but if he can work out a win from this position, he'll be doing very well. Okay, so Phil's made his move. He's got rid of 2 of the 3 I's and played Liri, keeping IOUS. Only scores 8, so he's still behind. He's 14 behind. And with Lewis about to make his move from Berlin, that 14-point deficit will become probably too big for Phil to overcome. Jess is just letting us know that the time that each player has left is quite low now, 3 minutes on Phil's clock, starting from 25. Lewis has got slightly more, 5 minutes. I think computer simulations would say that this game is a win for Lewis, unless he made a terrible blunder and played a non-word or something like that. A score that he has got is top right-hand corner on the double up there. He could play beg onto the G in Pog, also making bony, and EH. Probably his highest scoring move that he can get. 20, over 30, I think, for that. Jess is just passing a message on to me about Phil's score. I can't quite read that last number, Jess. Is it 77? Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing scores that the computer is telling me of 456 and 470. What's possibly happened is that during the game, the players have misscored a move and they're going into this end game with different scores in front of them to what the computer is saying, which is very interesting because if they do a recount at the end and find that out, it could be that the result switches from a win for one to a win to the other. Jess is pointing out that if they do a recount, Jess will not be able to tell them what the computer score is. They've got to completely manually do the recount themselves and possibly make errors again, but that's for the humans involved in the game to work out. So as I say, we're looking at a 14-point lead for Lewis going into the next move, but the players are looking at a different lead. I think they're looking at a 7-point lead for Lewis. It may not affect the result because, as I say, there's a big score on offer for Lewis here. Lewis will be looking to see what Phil can do with his IOUS, whether he can get a big score back himself, because if Lewis does play beg and bony and EH, he's leaving 4 tiles on his rack, which will be an 8-point swing when you add 4 onto Phil's score and take 4 off of Lewis's score. And Lewis will be aware of that and be just making sure that Phil hasn't got a big score himself with his move. That's assuming IOUS does go out. The outplay that Phil has left himself is a nice Ouijas, OUIJAS, JA on the board that was there very early. Could actually be part of the final move of the game. That's if Lewis doesn't block it. Messages coming through from Jess. Lewis is down to 1.5 minutes left. 1 minute 20 now, so he's really having to think about this last move, possibly because the scores that they've got in front of them are a lot closer than the computer has kept score for us. It'd be interesting to see which move was scored differently. The computer obviously is infallible and won't make an error on its scoring, but okay, so Lewis is committed to his move. He's gone for lumber, which doesn't score as many as beg, I don't think, but it's still a good score. 28, I think I saw come up there. So, yep, he's 498, just short of 500. Phil's 456, according to the computer. The only place he can go out is, as I say, Ouijas through the JA, and it looks like that's what he's doing. So 15 for Ouijas. There's only 2 tiles left on Lewis's rack, so 2 points added on to Phil's score, 2 subtracted from Lewis's. The computer gives us a win for Lewis of 498 to 475, so that's a win by 23. What the players have got will be very interesting to see. I think they'll have a win for Lewis, but it may not be by that many. It might be by fewer. And if it's by 5 or less, then maybe they'll... So, amazing comeback by Lewis there. He was 100 behind twice in the game. He had to bonus to draw back once, and then he bonus draw back again. He didn't draw the second blank that I thought might be crucial for him to win the game. Phil did that. Possibly missing Oryx was going to be a turning point, but with the pickup of the N, he had Onyx on the next go. Very sort of circumstance there. So all sorts going on in that game. This was my first ever commentated game, so it's been a cracker of a game to have been a part of. So well done to both players. Unlucky Phil, and well done Lewis, and enjoy the rest of the tournament, everyone. I'm not sure if we're still live. I can hear the players through Jess's headphones. Are you still live, are you? Okay. Yeah, I can hear Lewis saying about Zenala being mixed up with Zanella.
Yeah, we are always live.
What's Lewis's opinion about the Oryx and Onyx situation?
Oversight. Complete oversight, yeah.
It's interesting how that went, yeah.
Yes, I haven't mentioned Yampy yet, but now I have, so that's a bit awkward.
Oh, I didn't see that. What was that? Yampy?
He wasn't sure of Yampy.
Okay.
You know, there was the 60-point play underneath Lays.
Right, okay.
It was suggested in chat as well.
Yeah.
Instead of Zupa.
Okay.
It's like 67 points, something like that.
Yeah, apologies to anyone. Apologies to anyone in the chat room. I wasn't actually following chat, so if anyone was asking, I couldn't reply.
I was following chat, so okay. So I got it up on my phone.
Cracking game though, wasn't it? With so many twists and turns in it. Did they agree on the final score, by the way?
I can't say out loud because they're still in the room.
So. Okay.
So if they want to change the score, you know, they technically still can, but
yeah.
I'm not going to say out loud.
No, fair enough.
But you know, at least it didn't go to a recount, so I didn't have to sit here in silence.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed that. That was my first experience, and it flew by. So thanks, Jess, for organising it, and maybe I'll do another one sometime.
Yeah, I'm going to say no to recount.
Okay.
In my infinite less wisdom that I have.
Right.
I'm going to say no, sadly. But yes, I have no idea who the next game is. I'm sure my dad will pop in and tell me because as I've been moaning all over social media, I have stomach flu, so that's amazing.
Well, obviously I was not talking to you. I was just talking to the audience, and
yeah, but the audience can hear me now, so.
Right. Okay. And
I am talking to everyone.
But I mean, like during the game, obviously I'm commentating on what you are doing for me, and you coped very well with stomach flu with all the typing in. So well done.
No, I'm used to being ill at this time in the morning.
Yeah, no, you're not a morning person, are you?
No, I'm even wearing a hoodie that says I'm not a morning person.
Do you still need me, Jess, or shall I get off?
No, you can head off now. Thank you very much for commentating.
Okay, right. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Andrew, here's to more good games today.
Yeah, hopefully so. Okay then, bye.
Bye. So there we go. What an enjoyable game. Both players have now left the room. Phil will obviously be very frustrated at not seeing the possibility of an Onyx-Oryx play down column O. Because I think he could have afforded to block that for one turn and still held very decent tiles to still bonus. And Lewis would have really struggled with a high score comeback after that. So it really does pay to have a look at what's left and to work out what is the best possible play that your opponent can do. Admittedly, both players were down low on time. They both had under 5 minutes. So I didn't expect either of them to really think terribly hard, overly like that. But yes, I will be cutting the stream in a few minutes so that so that I can connect Ethernet cable and switch internet, because I've been provided with 4 very colourful wires right now and I need to work out which one of them actually operates properly. So the stream will end, but refresh your page afterwards. Refresh your page in about 5 minutes and the new stream should be beginning then. So I will see you momentarily. Of course.